sometimes reviewers will make these wonderfully sweeping statements like, "This game is unique," or "dreams to do something completely different," and then upon watching the review, notice that it wasn't actually accurate. However, if you were one of the lucky people who played Brutal Legend, you will know that this game did indeed do something different. And as my wife would charmingly put it, had more wonderfully colourful ideas than a unicorn vomiting rainbows. But seriously, this game was absolutely golden, but has unfortunately become one of those titles that you go, yeah, I remember that. I think I saw that. I know what it is. Yep, I definitely... Oh no, did I play it? I can't remember. But I guarantee if you had played this game, you would definitely remember it. And if I wasn't so reserved, I would probably say it's an absolute crime that this game has not been remade or remastered. Well, maybe a misdemeanor, I don't know what that means, but it's certainly a damn shame we never got another one. Hello everybody, I'm Roy McCoy, and in this video I'm talking about one of the most interesting hybrid games that I have ever played. And ask that all-important question, what happened to Brutal Legend? Seriously, what the hell happened to it? And this video will go a little bit like this. First of all, I'll talk about what was Brutal Legend, before moving on to the development history, then effectively looking at what went wrong with it, why have we not had that sequel, before finally asking the most important question, could we ever see another one? Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button as it really does help this video to do well, and if you're feeling really courageous, please consider subscribing. But after those shameless plugs, let's talk about what happened to Brutal Legend. So, what is it? Well, this is probably the most difficult part of the video, to be honest, because describing what Brutal Legend is, well, it's probably easier to just say what Brutal Legend isn't. It's definitely not a city builder. But seriously, what it actually is a hybrid between a third-person action-adventure game and a real-time strategy, which sounds like they're going to clash quite a lot, but somehow seemingly blended really well together. It was the brainchild of Tim Schafer, who created the game with his development team, Double Fine Productions. If you don't recognize his name, he is the person that brought you some of the most wonderful games like Grim Fandango, Psychonauts, and even did a lot of work on some of the Monkey Island games. In other words, this guy had a gaming pedigree, especially when it comes to comedic games. The game also featured a whole host of talent, including the voice acting of Jack Black, Ozzy Osbourne, and Lemmy from Motorhead. And if you're wondering how those last two creep into the game, this is a heavy metal themed game. So if you love things like heavy metal, comedy, and pretty much every genre out there, except for city building, then this game had something for you. It even had parts that looked a bit like Guitar Hero. That's what it was. So now let's talk about what happened to it. Our story begins in the year 2007, when work began at Double Fine Productions on Brutal Legend, shortly before they completed Psychonauts. The game was initially meant to be published by Vivendi Games, but if you ever played it, you'll notice that familiar logo is there, EA. Because in the end, the publishing rights fell to them and Double Fine Productions. Work began on the game, and the initial focus of the production was on the main character of Eddie, who was eventually voiced superbly by Jack Black. The character of Eddie was a roadie, who had an unfortunate accident and was transported to this heavy metal fantasy world. The team initially wanted to know what the character should be doing, and it was basically this: killing things with an axe, playing a rock guitar, and driving around in a hot rod. Like I said at the start, this is a game that did things differently. And effectively, that's what we get in the final game. Work began on the multiplayer sections, which were actually real-time strategy battles, where you take control of a group of combatants and effectively lead your army into battle against a group of other combatants, destroying statues, attacking stages, defending stages, you name it, it was in there. And you even had the capacity to fly around the map as a winged demon version of yourself. However, to avoid the stigma that came with real-time strategies of the time, Schafer wanted the game to invest much more in the third-person action-adventure elements, which saw the scale of the project boom, and unfortunately coincided with the time of Vivendi and Activision's merger. And Tim Schafer and his team found it very difficult to convince the new publishers to fund the bigger project. Eventually, Activision Blizzard decided to drop the game, for several reasons including the ever-growing budget, development delays, and they're just not feeling that it was a workable title. So then the game entered a period of not so much development hell, but more a period of limbo. And that was until EA stepped in, and finally came on board to publish the game and fund the rest of the project. And this is the point where our story bleeds into that what went wrong section. As after EA took over, things got a little bit heated, with Activision Blizzard claiming they'd never totally dropped it and they were still in talks to continue developing the game. And eventually Activision on June the 4th, 2009, filed a lawsuit to prevent the publishing of the game, claiming their investment into the project meant that they still had a valid claim on its future. In response, Double Fine countersued, citing that Activision had dropped the project during the Vivendi merger. Eventually, things were settled out of court, but various reports state that it took a huge toll on Schafer, with some even going as far to suggest that the quality of the final product was slightly affected by these events. However, the game was finally released on October the 13th, 2009, and came to the consoles including PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and also the PC. It's important to state at this moment that reception for the game was positive, and as of making this video, Brutal Legend still holds a Metacritic score on the PlayStation 3 of 83, with the 360 slightly behind on 82, and PC bringing up the rear with 80. However, these are great scores. Critics mainly praised the voice acting, the heavy metal theme, and the soundtrack. And I have to say, Jack Black pulled it off. He was incredible in this game. But as I said in the introduction, this game had a whole heap of talent, including Tim Curry and Ozzy Osbourne. Who doesn't want to play a game with Ozzy Osbourne in it? The main criticism towards this game is that it seemed to be a jack of all trades. Now, it did pull off that hybrid status, but there were some things missing. For example, the lack of a mini-map. Why would you not have a mini-map in an open world game? Likewise, your main character couldn't jump. Yep, that's right, he couldn't jump. Why would you not include that? I don't know. Likewise, some of the critics stated that the RTS elements were just a little bit too light, and the advanced tactics weren't obviously apparent. Sadly, a lot of the critics found the hybrid gameplay a little bit confusing, with a number of them stating that it would just be a better game if it was that third-person action-adventure in the rock world. Side missions were also a bit of a sticking point, but on the whole, as I said, most of the reviews were positive. In terms of sales, it didn't sell overly well. Now, it sold well compared to other Double Fine productions, but when you're dealing with a company like EA, you need to aim big. And initial sales in the US were around 215,000 copies, which is not bad, but not great. The lack of sales, the kind of bickering between Activision and Double Fine Productions, and the confusion about what this game actually was, seemingly was what went wrong. But I have to say, this game, I loved it. And I have been hoping for a long time for a sequel. And apparently back in the day, work did commence on a sequel. After Double Fine thought they'd been greenlit on the production, unfortunately, EA had different ideas and cancelled the title. But that isn't where our story ends. Oh no. We have some information about that wonderful sequel. Schafer stated that the sequel would have been 3 times the size of that game, and include new factions and more wonderful voice talent. Sadly, that sequel hasn't materialized in the cancellation by EA, and the amount of time that Double Fine Productions put into the pre-production of the sequel right before EA pulled the plug almost saw Double Fine Productions going bust. And after that, Double Fine Productions returned to working on much smaller projects. But as I mentioned towards the start of this video, Brutal Legend was a passion project for Tim Schafer. So, could we ever see one? Could we ever see a new game? Well, the head of the developer, Tim Schafer, is interested in making a sequel. Over the years, he has made multiple mentions to it. He talked about it in 2013, but highlighted that he needed the funding. And something significant happened in the year 2015. Now, remember that I mentioned that this game came out shortly after Psychonauts. Well, in 2015, Psychonauts 2 went into production, thanks to a crowdfunding campaign. And he said if Psychonauts 2 does well, there is a good chance a new Brutal Legend will come along. Even as late as E3 2017, when that was a thing in a physical space and not online, he stated that Brutal Legend would get a sequel. So come on, we have to see it. And I said at the start, it would be at the least a misdemeanor if this game didn't get a remake, remaster, or sequel. And I personally think it's coming. Psychonauts 2 is due for release in 2021. Judging by the previous game with its 2-year development cycle, I reckon in 2023-2024 we could get a new Brutal Legend game. Tim Schafer, a creator of amazing games, who gave us this underrated classic, because even though it's got a good Metacritic score, not enough people have played it. If you haven't played it, maybe it's time to dust off your PlayStation 3 or your PC and get playing it. But I hope in around the year 2023-2024 we're talking about Brutal Legend 2, or even Brutal Legend the remake. Let me know in the comments below if this is something you think could happen. I firmly believe it will, and if it's something that you would like to see. And of course, tell me about any other games you'd like me to cover in my What Happened To series. But from me today, I just want to say thanks a lot for watching, and this is Roy McCoy, out!